Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas. I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, and I'm so glad you've joined us today for the online Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute. Today, we're going to be talking about Go Forth Singing, where positive psychology meets social activism with Michele Ruskino. As individuals, the science, skills, and practices of positive psychology can help us navigate hard times as well as elevate our well-being to move toward flourishing. This knowledge can also be mobilized to serve the greater good. In recent years, many of us have felt the call to action to address critical issues in our communities, in our country, and in our world. In this session, Michele is going to share with us how an understanding of individual signature strengths can help each of us find our roles in the social change ecosystem and answer the call to action that we may feel inside us for issues that are important to us. Michele is a teacher, choreographer, dancer, writer, engaged citizen, and passionate lifelong learner. She has taught at Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter, Minnesota since 1988. Her current research explores the intersections between her experience teaching dance and somatic science, her scholarship in the psychology of resiliency, and an embodied understanding of human dignity. She received her BA from St. Olaf College and an MFA from Arizona State University. She holds a certificate in positive psychology from the Whole Being Institute and is currently developing an undergraduate curriculum in the science of resiliency as grounded in the field of positive psychology. Welcome to the call, Michele. I am so glad to have you back. It's just, as always, a delight to spend time with you, and I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and let's just talk about the Whole Being Institute for a second. I'd like to elevate them. They're such an amazing partnership and have been that institution, and also the certificate in positive psychology has really been life-changing for me. How has it been life-changing for you?
Well, it's been life-changing for me on a personal level. It gave me some wonderful tools to use during my own struggles. And probably the biggest thing, it has been so enlivening. Before my work with positive psychology, I was a crabby person. I was angry a lot of the time. And a lot of the time, my anger was really misplaced. So I think my journey in whole being, I keep learning more about myself and then having a richer understanding of whatever situation I'm in. And I just feel like on this level, I am a happier person. I value joyful things in my life. I'm a more productive person. And also, I am a senior citizen dance teacher. And there's times when I'm teaching in the studio and I feel like my physicality, as I'm getting older, I have to adapt and I have to adapt. I feel like I have tools to adapt. But as some of my work in dance is getting smaller, my work in positive psychology just keeps getting bigger. And so that's just energizing going forward.
Wow. I wonder if anybody else wants to write in the chat just how the micro practices that we've been talking about, whether you have a certificate in positive psychology yet or not. I'm going to say yet because I'm going to encourage everyone to get one and to participate in the Whole Being Institute certificate in positive psychology when it's right for you and if you can, and know that scholarships are available. You know, if that's a dream of yours, you know, there's always a way to make it happen. But what are the micro practices that you have used, that you've learned either on this call or that really help you adapt, whether it's as you're aging or in your life with stress and anxiety. One of the things that's taught me, Michele, from an embodied perspective, is to savor and to really. On Tuesday, we talked with Stephanie about small wins, to really acknowledge the small wins. But what I do now that I didn't do enough as a very busy person was to take a moment to just really feel and savor. And I don't think I knew the science behind how important that is for health until I took the SIP certificate in positive psychology. So, any comments on that?
I just was going to say, I would frame it a little differently. Yes, for me, I realized I had undervalued joy in my life. I was trying to be a good teacher and a good daughter and a good mother, and I was trying to be a serious academic, and somehow joy was put on the back burner. And savoring those joyful moments, letting who authentically goofy me is out, and just, finding joy in my life to balance out the work, that was a huge practice. And savoring is a big part of that joy.
Awesome. Well, you're going to talk about something that relates to that, which is kind of a serious thing, which is, social change and how activism and positive psychology intersect. And so it's interesting to start with the foundation of what it means to you personally. And I wonder if you would like me, or you can do it, to just start us in a kind of a meditation. And I also wanted to read what people have said in the chat. Ellen says she celebrates micro moments all the time, savor and gratitude. And Unita said the power of and, to accept reality and identity, and identify and take a step towards a slightly better future. Wow. Nancy says, in times of stress, thinking about one tiny thing I can do to move forward and savoring that micro step. And Rachel says, I'm currently in SIP. I'm still a crabby, angry person, but now I know I'm not doomed to live that kind of life. I'm moving away from that now, and I will continue after the course is over. Oh, Rachel, I love your humor. It must be one of your strengths too, and your honesty. Great. So let's jump into it, Michele.
I thought, in a very quick way, I'm going to bring people back to what I talked about the first time I was on the Positive Psychology Hour, which is three-dimensional resilience, three-dimensional breathing. So this time, as you're focusing on your breath, I want you to keep your eyes open, okay? Because I want you to think about your vertical, your tallness. And as you inhale, let your head float higher. And as you exhale, feel the ground under you, your sit bones on your chair. That magnificent length. As you inhale, put a little space between your vertebrae. And then pause. You've learned about signature strengths, about when you're at your best. And I want you to just think for a moment about a signature strength, about a time when you're at your best. And feel how your head floats up into this up space. And then take your awareness down to your feet or the bones under your pelvis. And think about that idea of being grounded. Maybe think about standing or sitting in your most favorite place. What helps you feel grounded? So we have up, strengths, down, grounded. And then come in close. The horizontal axis, if we're breathing, our rib cage expands like an accordion, and we exhale and it narrows. Breathe into our width exhale into our narrowness, and then stay in this narrow place. Relationship with self, who I am most authentically, self-compassion, how am I kind to myself? Take a big breath and think about out how we connect to others, how we connect to others. Well, I was doing a project for my final project in SIP, and I was thinking about this model to help me move forward. Like, how do I think about my strengths? Think about what grounds me? Think about my essential, authentic self. Think about my resonant relationships. How does that information help me step forward? And when I was thinking about those things, on a body level, the message I got was step back and be still. Step back. Sometimes your next best step is back. Forward, back. I didn't understand that as well. And I needed to figure that out. And I talked to Phoebe about it. I'm sure I talked to Caroline about it. It's like, I really understand up. I understand down. I understand in. I understand out. Going forward, stepping back. I need to dive into that. At the same time, I'm a girl from Minnesota. I live in a little town in St. Peter, but I grew up about 2 miles from where George Floyd was killed. I grew up on the lakes that I'm watching get very polluted. I'm seeing things I care passionately about. As I tried to support Black Lives Matter as a white-bodied, gray-haired lady, one of the things I was thinking about was the role of music in the civil rights. And I started to follow my curiosity about that. It was so fascinating. And part of what I kept seeing there was not people singing because they weren't afraid. It was singing because it made them feel connected and it gave them courage. So as I thought about my role as a positive psychologist, as an embodied person, as a passionate citizen involved in social activism, I wanted to try to bring those together. And I want to share with you my thinking about that. I'm going to need to go back a bit. Sorry, I didn't start at the beginning. Here we are. I am a dancer. I process through my body. And I want to tell you just a few stories about my role getting involved in positive psychology. You maybe have seen this graph, the resilience, the recovery model of resilience. We all have this level of functioning. The green line I'm calling my level of functioning, my level of being okay. And we all have kind of a different level. Some people, they're rock star production. They operate on this really higher level. And some operate on a lower level. Sonia Lubomirsky called this set points. I know kind of where my level is. And sometimes in life, something comes along, which we can call a trauma. It throws us off our level of functioning. And for me, in my journey of positive psychology, this was my own diagnosis with invasive lobular breast cancer. As I came into positive psychology, in all honesty, it was all about me. Like, how do I navigate this life-changing diagnosis? How do I, whatever the future is, how do I approach that with energy and joy and resilience? Over time, I returned to that level of functioning. I went through chemo and surgery and life and those things, but I kind of came back to my level of okayness. And the science shows most people, most of the time, do come back to whatever their previous level of okayness was. And this place of positive psychology, how do I use mindfulness? How do I savor the good moments? How do I think about a different point of view, a different perspective? They help me come from this challenging place to this place of okayness. But then I started thinking, these same skills. Now, in positive psychology, I learned about this. I learned that these same skills that help you navigate the hard times, the skills people put in the chat, can be the same skills that help you elevate, reach goals, come to a higher level of functioning. And I started to experience this. I started to experience the new energy and developing a new area of research and new classes to teach. And quite honestly, in the beginning, it was still all about me. How do I get through this tough time? How do I get to a higher flourishing level? But then the teacher in me said, I think I can teach this. And there are all these people struggling with cancer diagnoses. And I could teach these people some of these skills that I learned. And I can teach my undergraduate students some of these skills. But I kept thinking, I need to be able to do more. I need to be able to do more. I was hearing that call to action. I was rattled by the 2016 election on a national level and on a local level. And I wanted to know how I can use these skills of positive psychology. Where's my intersection? How can I harness my individual capacities, my strengths, and really make a contribution from that place? So that's where I'm beginning. Now, the next slide I'm going to put up, let me unpack it for you a little. I started visualizing this social activism dial. When I would talk to people or think about what's my place, the reactions I got from different people fell into a number of categories. There are some people who would say, I really don't care about politics. I really don't buy in. I don't care about climate change. I don't buy into it. Now, in terms of politics, when I'd first hear that I really don't care, my immediate go-to interpretation was the systems in place are working just fine for me, so I don't need to go further with this. But one of the things positive psychology has taught me, and one of my strengths, is perspective. And I started seeing it from a bigger perspective. And I realized that sometimes when somebody said, I really don't care, what they were saying is, I am barely keeping my nose above water. I am just struggling to survive. I don't have the capacity to go bigger right now. So I have become less judgmental when somebody places themselves on my little social dial activism scale at, I don't care. I think that can mean a lot of things. What I heard most often was, I really don't care, but I don't know how to help. I don't know what one person can do. And I was hearing a lack of agency. I don't have the skills or capacity to do something. I also heard, I really care, and I I don't know how to help, but I want to learn how to help. Now this place, I don't know how to help, to I want to learn how to help. The door swings open. This is the person who has started to say, I need to learn more. And then my vertical line here, I feel compelled to do something. I think of this as the call to action, the call to action. And in the last 5 years, I think particularly in 2016, 2017, 18, even in the activism we saw last summer after the death of George Floyd, we saw middle-aged women who haven't been out in the streets saying, I feel compelled to do something. The call to action. And then there's so many people who say, I am involved. I am involved. Here's what I do. And there's others who say, I'm involved. I'm doing this, but boy, I care so passionately. I have been so, knocked in the head. I can't be complacent. This is not right. I have to do more. And then there's the people who say, I have to do more. In fact, I need to step into a leadership role. Yesterday on Facebook, I saw a notice from a friend of mine who's spent 2 years as a city council member. And it started out saying, after deep reflection and contemplation and discussions with my family and friends, I've decided, and my heart sunk a little. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's so good on the city council. Don't say you're gonna not run again. And I read a little further and it said, I've decided to run for mayor. And I was like, whoa, go big. Yes, the call to action. I'm gonna step into a leadership role. Now, I have no judgment for where people are here, but there are different tools that we can embrace if we feel the call to move forward. I want to first talk about levels of activism, because I think some people, I have a big definition, let me put it that way. If we are behaving, talking, acting in a way that has an impact on another person, its impact goes beyond our personal domain, we are engaged in activism. Sometimes it's not very intentional. Most of us do many, many things at this little micro level. This is no written rules, but how we behave, how we respond, individual to individual, that communicates support, encouragement, approval, or communicates disapproval, criticism, judgment. In a few weeks, I'm going to my cousin's wedding. My cousin is an openly gay young man who is marrying the love of his life, another man. I got that invitation and I responded, I will be there with bells on, and I will be. My action, my response either supports him or knocks him down. So sometimes our work is on that one-on-one level. A few years ago, I participated in some circle learning groups with mass transit drivers about how they could be more welcoming to immigrants in the community. Now, Minnesota has the highest population of Somali immigrants outside of Somalia. And he frequently drove immigrants to the Hillel market, which is a nice little supermarket. He'd done it for years. And he said, I think next time I drive someone there, I'm going to go in and have a cup of coffee. That is a microactivism. That is a communication of support on a person-to-person way. Mesoactivism takes place in communities, in organizations. How do we change policies? Now, activism on this level has a little more risk. If you are employed in this organization, pushing, being an activist might have repercussions. But shifting on this community level is another place many of us feel comfortable working. I have a dear friend who is the provost at a college in the South, and she's the first female administrator. And this past year, they were looking at doing a number of building renovations. And one of the things she kept bringing to the table is there need to be lactation rooms. And the all-male administrators said, well, they're not bringing their babies to the campus. And she had to quietly say, no, but we have a limited leave policy. So when they return to work, they are lactating mothers and they need a quiet room with a door lock, with a chair, with an electrical outlet where they can pump. Activism. The new renovations, buildings, newly renovated buildings have lactation rooms. This is changing the organization. Many of us, when we think of activism, we think of this macro level. How do we change laws? How do we change institutions on this larger scale? And yes, I believe here, but here is where participating in election activism and how we show up, and over time laws are changed. But you notice my triangle, it's really wide at the base. Most of us have many, many opportunities for microactivism. Many of us have a chance to work on a community level, on an institutional level. And fewer of us maybe actually participate in changing the laws, but we can still work towards those in our actions. So I want to bring this out for the people who say, I don't see myself an activist. I still think you are. I think you are doing lots of microactivism, and we're just trying to name some of those things. Now, I think it was last summer, I was introduced to this model, and I will send you, with the recording, you'll get my slides, so you'll see where this comes from. But Deepa Iyer came up with this beautiful model, which I know is a little hard to see, for mapping our roles in the social change ecosystem. And she defined different roles we could play as change agents. And if I read them from the top going right, it's weavers, experimenters, frontline responders, visionaries, builders, caregivers, disruptors, healers, storytellers, guides, and we're back at weavers. So what I want to do next is unpack these roles a little. And I want you to think about your strengths. And this is, let me back up for a sec. I am a weaver. I'm also a storyteller. But as a weaver, I saw this model and immediately I thought, how do the via character strengths fit into this model? So that's where we're going. So the first group, the weavers, I see through lines of connectivity between people, places, organizations, ideas, movements. What do you think? And go ahead and type these in the chat. What do you think are the signature strengths of weavers? If you see, that's me. I'm the person who connects this person with this place, this idea with this organization. What are the strengths you bring to doing that?
We have some comments in the chat. Nancy says
You're welcome.
relationships, love and social intelligence, kindness.
Mm-hmm. So there's lots of them. And I'm going to just put the ones that jumped out to me. Curiosity. How do you think, wow, what's the connection between this and this? At the heart of curiosity is exploration, discovering new connections. Perspective. If you are just looking narrow, you have to widen your gaze, broaden and build, be out here. Perspective helps you to think, is there another way of seeing this? Oh, and creativity, seeing those connections where others might not see them. Experimenters. Do we have any experimenters here? I innovate, I pioneer, I invent, I take risks, I course correct as needed. I'd love to hear a few words in the chat. Do you see yourself as an experimenter? Or what do you think? And go ahead, Carolyn or Phoebe, read out any that come up.
Bravery. Experiential learning.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity again, I would think.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of overlaps.
Courage.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to put these were the ones that jumped up to me first. Creativity. Yeah, at the heart of artistic development, at the heart of science is creativity. You notice, you think, what if? You design an experiment. Self-regulation. Self-regulation is about course correction. You're trying something and you're like, oh, this doesn't work. I see it doesn't work. I'm going to take a different path. And perseverance. I try A doesn't work. I try B doesn't work. I try C. The experimenters, the innovators, they persevere. Now, as I'm going along, you might notice there's a few signature strengths that I don't use that I think are available in all of them. Frontline responders. I address community resources by marshaling and organizing resources, networks, messages. I'm going to pop mine up in the name of time and go ahead and let me know other ones, because this is not an exhaustive list. These are my first integrations.
Love, gratitude, service.
Absolutely. And when I think about, I went to leadership, I needed to think about leadership as ways of engaging groups to get things done. Yes, service, love. I think I could put love in every one of these. And I think I could put spirituality in every one of these. Spirituality from the point of purpose and meaning. Mm-hmm. I think about bravery. I think when I see a crisis unfold in front of me, I often get a bit frozen. Other people might retreat. First line responders, they run forward. There's a bravery. And there's a zest. I just have to say, this is not zest in the, oh, this makes me happy. This is zest in, that is energizing. Some people could say, this is terrifying. Some of those first line responders, they are energized by diving in and doing the hard work.
And Sonia said, honesty is often a strength of frontline responders. Honesty can bring forth a need to speak truth to power in a forceful way. Joanne said, storytelling. Phoebe, teamwork. Donna, resilience. And I think, Donna was, let's see, we were talking about hope and hope pathways, thinking, and certainly agency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many. You don't have to have every one of these strengths to be a frontline responder. All of these strengths might position you, and that might be where you feel your call to action. Visionaries. I imagine and generate the boldest possibilities, hopes, dreams, and remind us of our direction. Sonia, I was on the same page where you went on the frontline responders. Absolutely hope. Future-mindedness combined with action and honesty, seeing reality as it is, speaking hard truths, and creativity. How do we see possibilities? Not from what's happened before, but from what's never happened before.
And Unita said she agreed with Sonia that her perspective on how honesty can help. And Sonia was saying, any strength, she agreed with you, any strength can support us in any way. And visionaries, Joanne said, humor.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. You know when to bring what strength to the table. Yes.
And I also have humility. I think a visionary has to have humility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Builders. It's so interesting. Many of the strengths you name precede just where I'm thinking. The builders, I develop, I organize, I implement ideas, practices, people's resources in service of a collective vision. I told you back when I first started studying the civil rights movement more in depth, its relationship to the arts. I studied the farm workers movement in relation to the murals in Southern California. And one of the things I saw over and over again was the names and the faces of the people out front were not always the people doing the work. And the work, the builders, was often being done by the women. And the builders are the ones who often develop, organize, implement, gather those resources for a collective vision. Boy, teamwork and humility. This sense that I can't do this alone, but I know collectively we can take this on. Judgment, thinking things through. We need to do this, then do this, then do this. These are just a few characteristics. What are the other characteristics of builders?
Perseverance, social intelligence, bravery.
Mm. Caregivers. I nurture and nourish the people around me by creating and sustaining a community of care, joy, and connection. I love one of my friends framed this by saying, when I go to a march, I bring the sandwiches, right? What do we see in this bigger view of caregiving? I want to hear yours first.
Let's see. Lots of love and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have a few more that they want to? Yeah. Love, kindness, social intelligence. Yeah, everyone's in agreement.
I think social intelligence is the superpower of activists. That ability to see something through someone else's eyes. Going back to that moment of, I don't care, the systems are working for me, to oh my, I don't get alarmed. White-skinned, gray-haired, 66-year-old, slow-driving Michele when I see flashing lights behind me and a policeman stops me. They're probably telling me my taillight's out. I can understand the fear for a young Black man getting pulled over. I can see things through other eyes a little bit to help me understand a bigger point, that this system is not working for everyone.
And Deirdre said, great caregivers give self-care to keep going.
In before out. In before out. Disruptors. I take uncomfortable and risky actions to shake up the status quo, raise awareness, to build power. You're starting to get good at this. What are you seeing? Here are mine. Add to the list. Once again, speaking up for what's right, not what's easy. It takes courage. It takes bravery. Fairness. Treating everyone with respect. Noticing when everyone is not treated the same. Treating everyone evenly with respect. Everyone. And perspective. That seeing the bigger view.
Bravery, justice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the constellation of these, for instance, in bravery, fairness, and perspective. Via bravery is paired with courage, and the via strengths, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. We maybe have a lot of strengths in one area under VIA, but we have strengths in, we have all 24 strengths, but sometimes it's the really unique combination of those strengths. Being really kind and being really brave, right?
Fairness, social justice, and virtue are often paired together, right? And perspective is under the wisdom value. So you know how VIA has it listed under sort of values and then their traits under those, but the way that you're doing it is you're kind of pulling from different areas. So it's really interesting.
And don't we, if I'm preparing for this, I'm going to go to my love of learning and my curiosity and my storytelling and some other things. Whereas if I'm needing to speak to a principal of an elementary school or speak to the administration, and I need to go there from my position of privilege as a tenured professor, I'm not going to necessarily come from humor or even love of learning. I'm going to have to come from fairness and judgment. We look at the situation and we say, who am I in the face of this? And what strength do I need to rally and pull forward here? Healers, I want to keep going because we only have 15 minutes and I want to bring us into the home stretch. So think about these, very similar to caregivers, right? But what I like about this is caregiving often is on that micro level. And sometimes we can look at things more generationally, more systemically. We still need to bring that perspective, that big vision, that being able to see from other sides.
Rachel says hope, kindness, and
yeah, absolutely. Seeing a lot of crossover. Storytellers. We need storytellers. We need people who craft and share our community stories. Culture, experiences, histories. I was talking to a friend of mine who works at the Nicollet County Historical Society, and what they are archiving right now to tell the story of the COVID-19 pandemic. Who crafts the stories? And how we craft the stories determines how we go forward, the role of our narratives.
We have creativity and zest,
Mm-hmm.
love of learning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I landed on appreciation of beauty and excellence here because I was talking to a dear friend of mine, Julio, who works for the ACLU, and this was before COVID, but he was saying to me over coffee, people don't want to hear words anymore. I talk and I talk, and nothing's changing anybody's mind. How do we go from heart to heart? How do we go from heart to heart? And this happens in the arts, and this happens in stories. A good story can really capture an experience and speak from the storyteller's heart to the heart of the listener.
And Deirdre says that speaking truth to power part
Mm-hmm.
for the storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And that's courage, bravery too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Guides. I teach, I counsel, I advise. I use my gifts of well-earned discernment and wisdom. Love of learning, judgment, perspective. So many more. Any additions to my guide?
Reference for storytelling from Unita. Whoever tells the best story wins by Annette Simmons. Very insightful.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the brain loves storytelling. In terms of guiding, it's kindness. When I think of some of the guides, they're not telling someone what to do. They are kind of guiding them, suggesting, inviting, social intelligence for sure, and kindness and a sense of being able to openness. Yeah.
So these are the different roles, and I want you to spend some time thinking about what are my strengths? What do I really care passionately about? Where do I want to work? On that one-on-one micro level with my organization where I work, I participate, or do I want to work on that level of macro? How do we change laws? I want to return to the body. I had one more slide before I came to the body. Another wise friend of mine once put it together like this. This is the grounding of my Julio story. When I try and influence you with my body influencing your body, we call that force. If I try to influence you with my mind and my words influencing your mind and words, we call that persuasion. But if I can find that secret sauce that Julio was asking me about, that my heart somehow speaks to your heart, we call that inspiration. And so today, what I really wanted you to do is to think a little bit about that. This summer, we've been talking about Spire, about an inspired life. I want you to think about where your passions are, what your issues are, what your strengths are, and how you move forward or backward with that. And I want to give you one more idea, and then I hope we have time for a question or two. I go back to, I understand up, I understand down, I understand in, I understand out. I need to know more about moving forward and, oops, I went the wrong way. I was thinking moving backwards and I pushed the wrong arrow. Stepping back. Now, the axis of neuroception comes out of polyvagal theory. And it is about how, on a body-mind level, there are times when we assess safety and danger, there are times if I'm standing here and my next step is moving forward, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I have the capacity, I have the skills, I can do that. Sometimes, as I said with me, everything in my body is telling me, don't step forward, step back, which is often a response to this does not feel safe for me. And so when we think about these roles, being a frontline responder, a healer, a visionary, a caregiver, part of what we're tuning into is, does this feel safe? Does this feel dangerous? And we're the only one who can assess that. And I want you to think about, one, I think it's really important in this work to discern what is not safe from what is not comfortable. Even on that micro level, sometimes we're having a hard conversation. It's perfect. I will give you again, my nephew, he's not my nephew, he's my cousin's son who's getting married. I saw another cousin who basically responded, I hope you're not going to that wedding. He's just confused. And in that moment, I needed to say, he's not confused at all. He knows who he is. He knows who he loves. And I absolutely am going to that wedding. Was it a little uncomfortable? It was uncomfortable. It wasn't unsafe. But I go back to being stopped with a taillight out. I'm a white-skinned, gray-haired woman. Certain things are totally safe for me going forward. That might not be safe for someone else. You are the only one who can make that decision. I can go forward here. I can step back here. But I want to leave you or land with you one other interpretation of this front back. I know I said this at the Embodied Positive Psychology Summit a few years ago. For me right now, when I feel like I'm going to step forward, I'm going to step into the spotlight, there are moments when I have to say, I've spent enough time there. When I'm in a conversation with a group, I'm a chatty person. I have to monitor how much airtime I take up. There's times I have to intentionally not talk to let someone else's voice be heard. When I feel the urge to step forward, I also think, am I stepping forward from this place of privilege where I have been front and center long enough? And maybe the next best step is for me to step back and make some space for another voice, another person to step forward. That's the work I think about most right now. I was in a wonderful call about authenticity yesterday, and they talked about Peter Drucker's questions. You know, Peter Drucker in the 20th century really changed leadership, changed how we approach the workplace. And he asked people to think, what are my strengths? How do I work best? What are my values? Where do I belong? How can I contribute? And when my friend shared these questions, I'm like, those are the questions each of us, if we feel the call to activism, we ask ourselves, what are my strengths? How do I work best, serve best? What are my values? Where do I belong? How can I contribute? Well, Peter Drucker was the 20th century. an anonymous sage of the 21st century on Instagram posted. Some are posting on social media. Some are protesting in the streets. Some are donating silently. Some are educating themselves and having tough conversations with friends and family. A revolution has many lanes. Be kind to yourself and to others who are traveling in the same direction. Just keep your foot on the gas. I want to end, as I often do, with a poem. So I'm going to read a poem to you. If you want to read along with me, you can. Clearing by Martha Postlewaite. Do not try and save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. And my very last image, as I said, I'm a Minnesota girl, is my favorite quote by Paul Wellstone. We all do better when we all do better. I would love to carry on this conversation with all of you, and I hope we have that opportunity, but I think we're coming out of time.
We certainly are, but thank you so much, Michele. Wow, what a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to bring forth, there was one comment in the chat that I think is important to add to this conversation. Deirdre Rose was saying, I think the words "I don't care" can also indicate a burnout from high-level activism that in reflection is questioned, how effective for how long? And Unita commented on that. We all need to know how to nourish ourselves in order to sustain our activism. So I just wanted to know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah. I actually have found that when I have looked at my friends, I'm involved in the organization Indivisible, which, you know, across the country, and many of my Indivisible friends, and boy, do I see burnout. I see burnout so much. And I find myself bringing positive psychology tools in, like, you know, starting meetings with what's a moment you savored over the weekend? What was the best moment of the day? Having those little practices. But the other thing, coming back to our music metaphor, there's rest notes in music. And sometimes you're not the one singing. You really let other people sing. And my last tiny story, some of you have heard this, but in the beginning, I used to always teach up, down, out, in, up, down, out, in. As I was exploring that, I literally woke up at 3 a.m. one day and went, you have to do in before out. In has to come before out. And that idea of how do we have that relationship with ourselves? How do we take care of ourselves? How do we trust? How do we have the humility that I'm not the only one here doing this work? I can rest. There are other people who are going to carry this forward. So absolutely, I have found part of my role as an embodied positive psychologist is helping people to find ways to nourish and tend to themselves, because this is hard work.
And I also think of Joan Halifax's comment about having a soft front and a strong back, right? So that we can stand tall, but also be soft and available to the opportunities and the new ways of seeing and perspective.
And if I could, on that, in my bio at the beginning, it talked about exploring dignity. And I define dignity as treating someone as they are worthy of care and attention. And when I feel that in my body, I want to come back to what Caroline just said. If someone treats me with dignity, I stand tall when I inhale, but I stay soft. I don't go into hard warrior front. I stay tall, but I stay soft. And when I exhale, I don't collapse. So that idea, for me, the embodiment of dignity is tall and soft, strong back, soft heart.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to take you off the spotlight. We're going to go to gallery view so that everyone can take a moment just to thank Michele in our community. Feel free to come off mute. Lots of thank yous in the chat.
So much.
Yeah. Just beautiful to be in your presence,
Thank
Michele.
you, Michele. That was excellent.
Thank you
Very much.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful connecting with you over these months. I can tell you, I was visiting my son who did live in New York. He's not there now, and saw Phoebe. And Phoebe and I went and took a NIA class with Caroline. And that was sort of the beginning of a relationship. And every time I tune in, and now I sort of recognize a few faces who come every different time. And when I can't be there for the live, I often watch the recording. And it is a wonderful community, and I am grateful to be part of it.
Yeah, I agree, Ellen.
Elaine.
Elaine.
Yeah.
Elaine, I know that you're Elaine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And you'll get the recordings and the PowerPoints. So we note from Stephanie to take note of the small wins. And we know from Michele to go in before going out. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. You now told me that I am an
much.
activist. Didn't think of myself as an activist, but now I am.
There we are.
Me.
You can put it on your resume. I love that.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.